Well, I see that we have 55 people on now. Thank you all for joining us. Um, I think that we've got a couple of great presenters today around technology to support people in community living. So with that, again, as a reminder, if you do have questions for the presenter, please type them in the chat and we will get those in and make sure your questions are answered. So our first presenter today is going to be Ken Smith with a company called NextGen. They have a pretty amazing remote support platform that Ken is going to be talking to us about and describing how that platform is used to promote independence while somebody is living in the community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ken, and I'll shut my image off and mute myself, and you guys can hear from Ken.
All right. Let me, come on now. There we go. Can you see that okay?
We can. Yep. Thanks,
All right.
Ken.
Thank you. All right. I just wanted to share real quickly with you some information about what we're doing. And by starting with a conversation about what remote supports is. If you're familiar, and if you're not, basically what remote supports is it's a staffing solution at a distance. So instead of the staff person being physically in the home, this is a solution where we use technology to provide that support from another location. So for supervision, for reminders, support, things like that. That's where remote supports comes in. One of the some of the benefits of remote supports, especially for provider agencies, initially starting actually with the individual, is we've seen over the years a big increase in the independence for the people who are receiving this service. I'm out of Ohio, and the Ohio State Nysonger Center did some research on people who were receiving remote supports and kind of followed them through a process of time, what their opinions and thoughts were at the beginning prior to receiving the supports, and then after some time with it. And overwhelmingly, the independence was in the privacy. Surprisingly enough, privacy was the top things that they felt like they had more of with utilizing remote supports. Keep in mind, remote supports uses things like sensors, motion sensors, door sensors, things like that, and includes in a lot of cases cameras. And yet, their impression they walked away with was they actually had more privacy. But it's a huge benefit to those individuals. We just see a ton of independent growth with them. And the next benefit is to deal with the workforce shortage that we're experiencing and have been experiencing in this space for several years. It's not a mystery to anybody that we're struggling with this, and one of the challenges that remote supports can help with that is by taking those shift hours that are maybe sleep hours where staff are simply there for the what ifs. There's not actually a physical need for the staff to be there, but yet we're having to put staff people in that home, and if it's anything like, if your experience is anything like what I've seen, you have this a situation where you have staff that you don't have enough staff to fill the hours you have, so you have a lot of staff people that are on overtime, and now you have to put that person who's on overtime in a home where really they're only there just in case something happens. So remote supports can really help ease the stress that you're receiving from not being able to fill those shifts and the overtime expense and so forth. And that's what comes up. The next item there is the cost reduction. Helps out tremendously in those areas, helps in areas of turnover, because if you don't have to fill every single shift with somebody with just kind of, as I like to refer to it, as just throwing bodies on the wall to see what sticks, and you can actually maintain your top level people and put them in places where they're going to be of the most benefit, and utilize remote supports as something to subsidize the other hours that you don't necessarily need to fill with a physical person. It's a fantastic um, benefit in that way as well. And then the other thing is if a we have seen a handful of provider agencies who have decided to become remote support vendors, and one of the things that that does for them is that that kind of separates them from everybody else. If you can imagine, you have your supported living, your ICFs, your workshops, all your different business models, non-medical transportation. This is something that can separate you as providing a service that others are not providing, and it can really be a huge differentiator for your agency. How remote supports are being used is a couple different ways, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this um, because it gets into the weeds a little bit. But if you can imagine active support, or what we would refer to as active, if you can kind of picture in your mind the security officer with the surveillance system, I guess that would be kind of what you would call active. They are actively in real time. They are supervising what is happening in that home. They have cameras that they can see what's going on, that are actively providing live feed at all times. And so that would be what we would refer to as active. The downsides to active support is you can't provide support for as many homes. One person can't provide as much support. And it's not as effective as what we might think, in the sense of being able to catch things that are of concern. Next is passive reactive. So what passive reactive would be is I am passively monitoring. I'm using sensors in the home to tell me when to become active. So, for instance, if I have a situation with somebody who is at risk for visitors showing up in the middle of the night that may not be wanted in the home, you would have a sensor on the door, maybe a camera pointed at that door. But the only time that camera actually activates and provides live feed is when that door sensor tells the remote support person that that door is opened, and now they look in and they see what's actually going on. And then the third was intermittent. Intermittent would be for like those check-in services, the random things. So medication reminders, maybe a morning reminder, morning routine reminder to make sure that they got their keys before they go to work and all that type of stuff. So pretty general area or idea of how these things, services are being used. Um, Today's remote support model actually has it has some concerns with it. What it is today is you have a handful of remote support vendors, um, many of which only provide support in a single state or a couple of states, and then a very small handful that operate on a national level. And so there's some issues with that we need to address if you're looking at remote supports as a solution. One is the demand is increasing rapidly, and there's just not enough remote support vendors to meet that demand. And you'll see in some cases vendors that have installation dates that are months out. So you go through the process of getting somebody approved, and now you got to wait another 2 or 3 months before the system can actually even be installed, just because the demand is so high currently. The next is, I always like to look at it this way: is nobody understands the needs of the individuals we're serving like the local provider does, and these national vendors, they can't possibly understand um, the intricacies of the culture in the area, just the day-to-day events. It's just not something they can relate to. And so that's one of the downsides to going with a third party vendor, is they aren't going to be able to connect as well with the individuals that we're serving. Um, Next is that there's no dissemination of knowledge. All of the remote support vendors kind of keep it in close to the vest. They don't want anybody to know how they're doing what they're doing, and so there's a lack of clarity as far as, well, what are they doing and how are they doing it? And so it builds a little bit of a mistrust in there. And the third part is they are a business and they're a for-profit business. And so if you contract with them, they're going to have a hefty markup on their services. And so depending on what your state's reimbursement model is, that can greatly affect what you're actually going to, uh, how much benefit that you're actually going to get. And there's even some states where uh, there is no benefit. The remote support vendor is actually replacing you for whatever hours that they're providing service. So the question that has come up over the years, I've been doing this, doing remote supports as a vendor for the past uh, 12, 13 years. And one of the questions that comes up a lot in presentations, things like that is, well, why wouldn't our agency just do this ourselves? Why wouldn't we start our own remote support operation? And there are some agencies that have done that very thing. The reason that a lot of them don't is one of the big hurdles is the startup cost. It's extremely expensive to if you're going to use something that's already exists, that is not designed for this service. So you're making a hybrid. You're kind of cobbling things together, which a lot of vendors have done. It's very expensive to get that started up and to figure things out and to make things kind of play nice together. The next is just the off the shelf devices don't always work as well in a setting like this as what we think they will. And it's interesting. I was talking to a remote support vendor who is also an agency provider, and they've gone this do it yourself route. And one of the things that they recognized early on is they were using all this IoT stuff, Ring video doorbells and all the kind of stuff that you buy off the shelf. And the problem they ran into is these things are not designed for this kind of purpose, and there's a high failure rate with them. And so they've had to learn the hard way through that R&D, and it gets very expensive to do that, to learn the hard way. And so they've had to really change the way what they offer and so forth. Next is the return on investment. You're going to dump a lot of money, anywhere from a couple $100,000 up front to maybe maintain it. This agency I was referring to, they've been doing this for 5 or 6 years, and they're still dumping a couple $100,000 every year into just maintaining what they have and trying to develop what they have. So it really pushes that return on investment out. Next, we have the platform. There's nothing designed for this purpose. Well, there wasn't anything designed for this purpose to provide remote supports for people with developmental disabilities. There hasn't been anything on the market to do that. And so anything you put together is just kind of, you're figuring out as you go. And so you're going to have the cost and the complexity of the platform, developing the platform and so forth, if you do it yourself. And then there's the fact that if you haven't done it before, then you're going to have the lack of expertise. You don't know what you don't know. And so that takes some time to figure out. So what NextGen has done is we have taken all of those things into consideration. And we said, you know what? We've got the background knowledge. Myself, one of my partners, combined, we have over 23 years of experience in the remote support service model for people with developmental disabilities. And then we also have some partners that are very heavy in the tech industry for healthcare. And so what we did is we said, okay, here's all these problems that I just expressed to you. Here's the barriers, and let's build something that deals with all of those barriers. And so that's where NextGen comes in. So next gen, what we provide is that, first of all, we drastically reduce the cost of what it costs to do it yourself, because instead of one agency having to do it just for themselves, we're providing this platform for multiple agencies. And so one agency doesn't have to bear all the cost. It's designed by those of us who have been in the trenches and done this service for a long time. Um, it's the only platform, to our knowledge, that actually provides us and is specifically designed for people with developmental disabilities. um, it's easy to get things up and running because we provide all of that onboarding support and training. So the platform itself, as I was talking about the training, is initially what we provide is that onboarding, that brainstorming with the team to say, okay, this is how you're going to set it up. This is the training. These are the key individuals, the key positions that you need to be able to or take in consideration as far as filling. The support center, we would actually set up the support center. That's where you actually do the monitoring from. We would set that up as well as provide the software platform so that, again, it's all turnkey. You don't have to deal with that. And on top of that, all of the equipment that would go in the homes or the sites where the people are being served, all that equipment also we provide. That way it's been tested. You know it's going to work with the system, and it eliminates all that guesswork you have to deal with. So just as a visual, what you see here is in the center is our cloud. It's the next gen cloud. And then on one side, you have just your support center. That's where the caregiver is working, the remote caregiver, and all of the pieces of support that they need surrounding them. And then the person's home, all the equipment and communication and everything that goes back and forth through the cloud is available there. So I'm going to try here to show you a demo. Let me, I got to change my screens around a little bit. Bear with me.
While Ken is doing, getting his screen set up to do the demo, just want to remind everybody, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. I'll get them in for you.
I lost the I lost the Zoom. Hang on here. I'm trying to find the place where I can. Oh, here it is. It's up here. Duh. All right. And I lost it again. Have I mentioned we're a tech company? Here we go. All right. Can you see that okay?
Yeah, we've got Ken.
You've got the demo?
Correct.
Screen. Okay. It's weird. It's saying that it's on the other screen. So, okay. So we see on this, this actually is a demonstration. It's not the actual software. It's just to demonstrate what actually happens within the software. And if you can see, there's 4 separate rectangles. These actually represent 4 different monitor screens. Each screen is dedicated to a different purpose. And the reason we did that is, if you've ever been, well, like I was just struggling on my own computer as I'm trying to dig down through Windows and stuff like that to find the information I'm looking for. You run into the same, you can run into the same issue with this if you don't have things dedicated to certain purposes. So that's one of the things that we thought through, is we want to make sure that it makes the job of the remote caregiver as easy as possible. So on this first screen, we call screen 1, is our site grid. So this shows all the different homes that people are being served in for this caregiver at this point in time. The next screen, screen 2 over here on the top right, is where our video playback happens, and I'll demonstrate that here in a minute. Gives us information about what event is actually happening, so we can respond to it. Down here in screen 3, lower left, is where we would provide our video, our face-to-face, one-on-one video. And then over here is where we do our documentation. So as a demonstration, we have an event happens, and you see when that event up here in the upper left-hand corner, we see this flashing green. It tells us the site that the event has happened in. And to make it easier, it automatically has queued up the site for that over here in screen 2 and in screen 4. So we have the information about the event. It says alert type kitchen. And then the protocol for that alert type is no excessive snacking after 10 p.m. And if eating sweets, attempt to redirect. And we have 2 individuals living in this home. And we can actually switch between those people to see, and we can do it here in this screen, or we can do it down here in screen 4. I can switch between these individuals so I can see what their actual care plan involves in it. So maybe this alert comes up. The alert is for Adam, but it's not for Matt. And we see Matt in the kitchen. Okay, well, we can just ignore it and move on because Matt's not the one at risk. But we have, in this case, we have Adam in the kitchen. Up here, we have one video here says video playback. What this is going to show you is it's going to have a pre and post video clip about 20 seconds long of the event. So what happens is I have a motion sensor in this room, and what this video is going to show me is 10 seconds before that motion sensor was triggered and 10 seconds after the motion was triggered. That way I know what event was happening leading up to the triggering of the motion and what is continuing to happen afterwards. And then over here on this side, on the right side, is live feed. This is what's actually happening currently. The reason you want that is so that you don't miss anything. If somebody walked in here quickly, grabbed some snacks, some ho-hos out of the cabinet, and then ran back out of the kitchen, if all I had was live feed, I may never see that event happened. But here I'm going to see what event happened. Now I'm going to see they're no longer in the kitchen, so I'm going to call the house and I'm going to see what's actually going on. Now, obviously, these are stock photos. They're not actual photos. And so in this situation, we're calling Adam to remind him not to be eating ho-hos. And lo and behold, he's hopefully he's allowed to work with sharp objects. But he's getting ready to snack on something healthy. So we say, we give him an attaboy, we end the call, and then we can come over here and we can document. We can either use these quick action buttons, or we can document something in the resolution. And as soon as we submit this, everything clears out. Okay. So let's say we had an event happen and we got 2 events happening. So you see, these are different colors because we're color coding according to priority. And so now, same thing here. This one came in first. And so I'm going to deal with it. Jane, there's home entry, no visitors after 9 p.m. I see the doors open. I call the home. I'm not going to go through all the steps. I call the home to see what's happening, to deal with the situation. There's no action necessary. And so I clear that. As soon as I submit that, the next event queues up for me. And then I can deal with that one. Okay. Now, the next thing we want to look at is I can also come up here and I can say, you know what, I want to deal with this one first, this green one first, because I can deal with it quicker. Oh, what do I do here? Keep in mind, it's a demo. So I've got these 2 events happening. One question that comes up a lot is, well, what if there's an emergency? You got other things going on. What if there's an emergency that happens? So what's built in here is this countdown that tells me, hey, I've got an emergency situation. Maybe I can deal with this quickly. Maybe I can't. But if I can't deal with it quickly enough, it's automatically going to switch over to this emergency situation. I deal with the emergency situation. I document it, I submit it, and it's automatically going to queue up the next priority level item on the list. And so I can clear that one, submit, clear that one, and submit. Okay. So I'm going to jump.
A couple of questions coming in.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that we keep an eye on our time here. So we have a question from someone saying, where is it? Sorry about that. Can you talk a little bit about how to determine if remote supports will be appropriate for someone? And we do keep a short answer because we do have another whole session on that. I want to make sure we talk about it.
Yeah. So that is a wide open question, really. It really is going to heavily depend upon the individual that we're talking about. And but one of the things that we're providing as part of NextGen is training on things like that. So when we're onboarding a new customer, one of the things that we expect to go through with them is training them on things like that. How do we identify who's the right people are? So we're going to start out with some pilot sites, and we're going to work with our customer to help them determine, is this person appropriate, isn't it, and train whoever they've selected as the person that needs to learn those things, or people that need to learn those things. We're going to train them on how to identify the appropriate person for that. So I know that I didn't really answer the question, but that is part of it, because it is we don't really have time to cover all the facets of that to answer that question fully.
That's a big question. Thank you.
Yep.
Donald, did you have something? I just noticed you pop up there.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in, that's exactly why, as we showcase some of these tech solutions, in particular around remote supports, I encourage any registrants today to also register for remote supports 1 and 2. That's a deeper dive that takes an account and provides best practices on how a team, because it should be a team approach, on how we get to taking a deeper dive on if Donald is a good candidate to receive remote supports. It gives the teams those soft skills, those fundamental skills, to be able to do that in a team approach and figure that out together. So I just wanted to put that plug in, because as this is showcasing a tech solution, we do have 2 remote supports, part 1 and 2, that will actually take a deeper dive on best practices.
Yeah.
Yep. Actually, Donald, I'm sorry, if I could add this into what you were saying there, Donald, is then what you're looking at is whoever vendor, whether you're looking to do NextGen and do it yourself, or you're working with a third-party vendor, then it's the part of that process is involving that vendor in that conversation to make sure that they can do it. There may be some use cases that you're like, yes, remote supports can provide support for this individual, but maybe that vendor is not appropriate for that particular solution. Just as an example, and this isn't picking on anybody, but there are some remote support vendors that don't do any cameras, and all they monitor is nighttime. Okay. And so if you need remote supports during the day, it may be remote supports may be appropriate for the person, but that vendor isn't, if that makes sense. Dustin, you had something?
Yeah, we had lots of questions around privacy and HRC approval and DDS specific processes for this, which I want to make sure that I'm not ignoring questions, but we will get to that as Donald was saying, in the next 2 webinars, which are more deep dives into remote supports, where we will answer those questions. So just to keep us on track here, we'll kind of skip through those. We had one question from somebody specific to NextGen, though. Is the equipment leased or purchased from NextGen to the service provider?
Okay, so the equipment itself, if we're talking about the equipment that goes into the client's home, it would be purchased from NextGen, and then how it is handled within that state. Typically, in most of the states, they are reimbursing for the equipment, so it's a wash for the agency. But they may have different policies as far as how that is reimbursed. So it may be reimbursed over time. So you would, if you were the vendor, if you're working with NextGen and therefore you become a vendor and you are providing that equipment in that home, you buy it from NextGen and then maybe you're leasing it uh, to the waiver, or the waiver is paying it on a monthly basis as opposed to all at once.
Okay.
It just depends on the local rules and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Yep.
And for those
Time
of you,
wise,
I'm sorry.
I was just asking time. I don't know what we've got as far as that.
Yeah, I think we're probably about at the end of your part of
Okay.
the presentation.
Fine.
Donald did, just for everybody there, throw in some information about the next sessions, which we will dive deep into this. Ken would invite you to, kind of come back, maybe potentially to join us there to answer any of those questions from the kind of expertise, your expertise. There is Ken's information. If anybody has questions or would like to talk to Ken more about NextGen, feel free. Ken, thank you very much for joining us today, and
Absolutely.
welcome to stick on and listen to our next presentations, but feel free to drop off if you need to.
All right. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ken.
So our next presenter was going to be AbleLink Technologies, excuse me, out of Boulder, Colorado. But I did get an email from them earlier today that they've had some pretty significant things come up that they will not be able to present today. So I do want to make sure that we give you guys some valuable content. So I have some other presentations that I have done in the past that I wanted to kind of run through with you, just to kind of show you some other forms of technology that can be used in community living as well. So I'll start with actually kind of showing you, just giving you a sneak peek at AbleLink and the technologies, one of the technologies that they have developed. Donald, we may want to look at getting AbleLink scheduled on one of the future webinar series, because they do have lots of great things, and they apologize for not being able to make it today. So one of the tech pieces of tech that AbleLink has that I was really hoping they could show you guys today, but we will get on a future webinar, is their technology called Wayfinder. The Wayfinder is an app that helps individuals with disabilities navigate their community and use public transportation independently. So there are many apps out there today that do kind of ADL task prompting routines, where the app can be used to coach somebody through, preparing a meal. Spaghetti is an example, and it will give them visual and audible prompts step by step through all of the steps of preparing that spaghetti. And AbleLink has basically taken that same approach with their Wayfinder app, which you can kind of see an example here on their website. And it gives individuals step-by-step prompting through all of the necessary steps of using public transportation. So the individual has a device in their hand like this, and they tap where they want to go. In this example, it looks like they want to go to Jamba Juice. So they would tap the Jamba Juice picture here. And then the Wayfinder app opens up and gives them step-by-step instructions on how to, use public transportation to get to Jamba Juice. So when they tap that button, it may say, walk out your front door, and then give them a reminder to lock their door, as an example. Then it will show them, tell them and show them a picture of their bus stop. Walk to the bus stop. Here's your bus stop. It's on this corner. Walk to your right, or, down the street towards Subway, and then stop in front of Subway at the bus stop. It will tell them, give them a picture of what their bus will look like, the bus number, maybe something like that. And then it actually has GPS built in it as well, so that as the individual gets on their bus, it is tracking that individual's location through GPS. And as you can see in the example here, telling them where they're at, giving them an alert and a cue as to when their bus stop is coming up, a picture of their bus stop, and then instructions to get to their final location. So after they get off the bus, it will give them, prompts and cues and show them how to get to Jamba Juice, as an example. There is a short video here that I think that will probably do a pretty good job of giving you an introduction to AbleLink that I will go ahead and play here. Please let me know if the audio is not coming through, and I can hopefully adjust a setting.
Yeah, it's a little low, Dustin.
Is that better?
Got it right. Give me 5. All right, nice job.
Okay, so that's, I thought that the video was actually going to show a little bit more of the person interacting with the app. There is another video that they have, but that does that, I believe. But AbleLink will be hopefully on a future session, so you guys can really see that. The next thing I wanted to do is just to kind of give you a few other examples of some tech that are out there. And I have, I'm going to move through this extremely quickly. One, because I wasn't prepared to do it, but also I want to make sure that we have some time for questions here at the end. So let me share my screen with you. And so I wanted to go through 2 different types of tech, again, extremely quickly. There are lots of tech that you guys can go get kind of off the shelf, is the way that I like to describe it. These are things that are commercially available that you can go buy at Best Buy or buy it on Amazon, and you don't have to go buy it from, you know, a company that has developed things specifically for people with disabilities. So the first one that I want to kind of go through here is a really cool example. I don't know if you guys have seen these Bose frames. You can buy them in Target. They're just sunglasses that have Bluetooth, that Bluetooth to your phone so that you can hear through the kind of the earpiece here. Those are great and commercially available and, you know, fun to use just to listen to music. But imagine a person that is blind or low vision using those and connecting those to their smartphone and using VoiceOver on their smartphone if they're unable to see the screen, using VoiceOver on their smartphone and hearing through the speakers coming through the glasses, so that they don't have to have that phone on speaker and everybody else around them is hearing their text messages or, you know, hearing what they're doing on their phone. They can have some privacy with that. Or using it with a company called Ira that is basically remote navigational assistance for people that are blind or low vision. So using that person, the person using their phone can hold their phone up, and someone remotely from Ira can look through the video camera on the phone and talk to that person in real time and help them navigate their community. So lots of cool things happening there, and I'm going to skip through these videos because we just do not have time for these. So bridging apps, we'll talk about that one in a future session. I don't know if anybody's using any forms of these RFID locks, which are great, simple tech solution to help keep medications secure and office supplies and sharps, all of those kinds of things secure. Ring is another great option, and Ken kind of spoke to some of the options of provider agencies using technologies like Ring to do remote supports in kind of a DIY fashion. It can be done, and Ring has some pretty amazing solutions. Cameras that go indoors and outdoors that can see in low light and have night vision. They have motion detection built in. You can communicate through the camera, through an app on a phone. So you really could use something like Ring to do kind of a DIY version of remote supports. Again, Ken, I think, pointed out, you know, there are some risks and complexities in setting these things up and integrating them into a comprehensive remote support system, but they're great for kind of one-off solutions. And I'm going to skip this one as well, just to make sure we get to some other things. You can also use other various smart home type devices, and everybody's probably seen these things 100 times, where you can set up smart routines where the individual can control the environment using these smart devices, turning lights on and off, controlling appliances, those kinds of things through a variety of different smart devices, all kind of linked together. There are even smart garage doors now. So maybe you have an individual that smokes and they go out the garage door to smoke. As soon as that garage door opens, you can get an alert. There's a camera built into this garage door so that you could keep an eye on that individual to make sure that they're remaining safe while they do those things. I'm going to skip the phone soap thing. Well, another thing that we're seeing become a little bit more prevalent is AI and kind of machine learning. And there's a company called Face that has created basically facial recognition algorithms that can run on most types of commercially available cameras. So like your Ring, right? There's a plugin where you would install this Face into the applications that run the off-the-shelf cameras that you get, and then you can make those cameras do facial recognition. So imagine having this outside of a home where you're serving an individual and they're at risk of certain visitors in their area that have tried to exploit them in the past. Well, you can have the images of those folks, identify those people, and push alerts out through the cameras that already have those types of notifications set up. One of the ideas that I had when I first saw this was maybe this is a future of EVV, electronic visit verification. Staff walk through the door and we're not just using GPS, we're actually seeing their face walk through the door, right? I don't know. Here's a really cool thing that is essentially it's a mobile home security door sensor alert type device, where, as you can see in the pictures here, it kind of hangs on a doorknob. When that door opens or there's movement and that device kind of is jostled or vibrates when the door opens, it can push an alert out to someone in the home or someone remotely that a visitor is entering the home. It also has built-in audio so that you can communicate with people through this. Also has a call button. So if the individual needs assistance with something, it kind of functions as a PERS device as well. So the person can press a button and get assistance immediately if necessary. And actually has smoke and CO built in as well. So it can, kind of hear that smoke detector or carbon monoxide chirping and push an alert. Another example of that is this little Mimic device, which is just a little device, again, that kind of sticks on the door, basically functions the exact way that the other one does, but has a little bit different form factor. So we're starting to see all kinds of amazing smart stuff out there like this. Another amazing tool that for people that are blind, low vision, or even autistic, this is a great tool for, to help them access their environment and live in their community, is the Microsoft Seeing AI app. And again, I'm not going to play the video, but I can make this presentation available to people if necessary. The Microsoft Seeing AI app is free. You download it on any device, Android, Apple, etc., Windows, obviously Windows. And what the device does is it uses the camera in the phone to help that person with blind or low vision see things in their environment, right? So it will read text, it can read documents, it can scan barcodes. So if the person's in a grocery store and they pick up a can off the shelf, they can scan the barcode. It'll tell them this is green beans, or this is corn, or this is, etc. It can actually even identify people in the environment. And it can distinguish between people that it has seen before, that you have said, this person is my mom. So when you move the phone over, it will say, your mom. Or if it's not your mother and the app hasn't been trained yet to know who that person is, it can say, male wearing a green cap with white shirt and blue pants, as an example. It can give you scenes, so it can say you're in a kitchen, the stove is 10 feet this way or that way. It can read currency, all kinds of things. It can even read handwriting. One of the things that they show in the video here is that it can actually see facial expressions. So for that person that is maybe autistic, that has a tough time interpreting facial expressions, it can say man smiling happy or man frowning unhappy to help that person identify those emotions. And again, that is a free app called Microsoft Seeing AI. And I think that we're kind of getting into an area here where we may have some of the tech that we're going to show in other sessions, but I will keep going here and show you just a few more, and then I'll stop to see if there are any questions. This is called Smart Monitor. It is an app that runs on any smartwatch. I should say Android or Apple. That detects irregular movements in the wrist associated with a seizure. So it's a seizure sensor, basically. And using all of the smart features of the phone and the watch, it can then push alerts out. You can listen in as a seizure is occurring. You can talk to the person as a seizure is occurring through the watch. It has GPS built in, so you can actually track where somebody's at. And one of the really cool things is that it's recording the data from the seizure, the duration, the severity, and all. I'm not a doctor, all those other things that a neurologist may benefit from knowing. So it can give you some amazing detail into that seizure activity. Here's another really great community living tool, and I'll end on this one and then see what questions we have. And actually, Nucleus is presenting on a future session, so I won't get into Nucleus. I'll let them do it. They'll do a much better job than I am. I believe that is scheduled in August of this year. So I'll kind of stop there. Donald, I'm sure we probably have some questions in the chat, and I'm going to stop and go back there to see what questions people have. Looking through the chat, and I'm not seeing any questions. Oh, we do have a question. What is the name of the free Microsoft app? That is Microsoft Seeing AI. So Seeing, SEEING, and then capital A, capital I. Thank you, Cheryl. I love those apps and programs too.
And just a question about AbleLink, Dustin. I know you've seen that before actually in action. With that app, what role do providers play in programming an app of that nature? Being that it's very, specific to routes and where the person usually goes in their daily routine.
Yeah, good question. Thank you. And actually, I meant to show that. So down here, they have do have a few more images on their website that kind of talk to this. Where you can build in those routines yourself. So kind of on the right-hand side here, you see the route builder portion of that Wayfinder app, where you basically do the route with the phone, recording those images, recording those GPS locations, and you can basically create that custom routine that will take that person step by step using the actual pictures of the route and of the environment that they're going to be doing it in. There are also various other settings that you can obviously set up here, where you can set up geofences. So if a person leaves a specific range of the bus stop prior to getting on the bus, it can push an alert. Or if the person maybe got on the wrong bus by accident and goes way off course of where they should be, it can push an alert out for those types of things as well.
So this can be almost a complementary piece of tech during travel training, or even just after travel training, the person is using this as a tool that can complement remote support. So hypothetically, if it goes out of X amount of range, the person does with this app, then that prompts the staff to drop in on the person, whether it's by phone call or FaceTime.
Exactly. You could almost call this remote transportation, remote supports for transportation, because there is somebody there in the event that the app or the device detects that something is not going as scheduled or per routine.
And just to skip around back to remote supports, based on NextGen's presentation and not giving too much up for our part 1 and part 2 of remote supports. However, I just wanted to talk with you about remote supports necessarily doesn't have to involve a camera, correct? There are different forms. It's based on the person's preferences and needs and what model the team decides to use of remote supports.
Yeah, and actually, Ken is, I believe, still on. But yes, the answer to that is yes.
Yeah, that's correct.
In there are many remote support vendors out there, and some of them use cameras, some of them don't. Some of them offer both options. Ken, do people that use NextGen have to use cameras?
They don't have to. What's interesting about that particular, I guess you'd say, concern or pushback is oftentimes it's how you approach that conversation that makes all the difference. So for instance, let's say that this individual really wants independence. I mean, that's what they're motivated by. They really want people out of their face for at least part of the day or in the evening or whatever. They want that time alone. And but one of the concerns is let's just say it's unwanted visitors, and that's a big concern to everybody. And so, the way I've handled it in the past is and having a conversation with them, I said, well, we can do that without a camera. I mean, it would just, here's how it would work. We'd put a sensor on the door, and every time the door opens, we're going to call you and see what's going on. And normally the response is, well, that's going to suck. I said, yeah, or we can just put a camera up, and then when the door opens, if we see nothing's happening, we just leave you alone. Oh, okay, let's put the camera in. And I can say that I don't know that I've ever had a situation when I just kind of laid it all out and just was 100% honest, where we felt like we needed a camera to do it effectively, where the person didn't finally say, you know what, yeah, I guess that's okay. And like I said at the beginning of my talk about the research that Ohio State did, is that's one of the things they discovered, is that in the beginning, people were apprehensive about cameras. They didn't really want the cameras. But then by the time they had received the services for, I forget what the time frame was, but one of the things that they identified is the thing that they liked the most about remote supports was privacy. And they didn't even think about the cameras anymore, because it really helps the remote caregiver reduce the amount of intrusion that they have in that person, in whatever they're doing in their daily life. And it helps them from keeping, from nagging and bugging them. Somebody just opens the door, looks outside and closes the door. We don't need to do anything about that. Just document that it was a non-event and move on. And I think everybody appreciates that once they understand it. But if you just say, hey, we're going to put cameras in your house and see everything you're doing, then it sounds creepy until you explain it.
And also having that discussion with the person, what are your rules around this that you want to establish around the use of the camera?
Yeah, so what we've done in our platform is we developed it so that screen that's in the upper left-hand corner, the grid, we designed it with a couple options in there for around this particular topic. And one is they can choose to have live feed in that little box of a single camera that's in the home. So let's say that it's somebody that the team feels uncomfortable not having eyes on for whatever reason. And maybe it's in the kitchen because of sharps or whatever. So they want to have a camera dedicated, so they can have that in there. But the default position is there's no camera that's on. The only time the cameras are visible to the remote caregiver is when an event is triggered, and that's when they actually see what is happening. That way there's more privacy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amadi, I see that you have a hand up. Do you have a question? If so, throw it in the chat, or I'm happy to allow you to talk. but I didn't want to just put you out there if the hand raise was an accident. So, or any other questions from anyone else?
Hey, Dustin, you mind if I take 1 minute to share some cool tech?
Yeah, we've got 1 minute. Yeah, go for it.
All right, hang on here. And I think I've talked to you about this. This thing's called Flick, okay? And what's really neat is I'm one of those people that I never really understood the whole smart speaker craze. I'm going to speak my commands out loud for something to do that I could probably go do myself. But what Flick has done is they take all a lot of different IoT devices, including HomeKit, Apple HomeKit, and Alexa, and you can program it so that you don't have to say, because you say the wrong thing, and then you start having arguments with your smart speaker at home, and because it doesn't do what you want it to do. And so you can set this thing up so that with a single button push, it will actually trigger multiple things to happen at the same time. So I've got a smart home in my other company. I've got a smart home that I've been working with building for one of the county boards here in Ohio. And we put this in place because they've got an Alexa ecosystem. And so one of the routines I put together was like when the person comes home, they can push the button. Alexa welcomes them home, starts the music that they like playing. It adjusts the thermostat automatically. It turns the lights on. It does all these steps just with a single button push. And, when you have somebody who maybe gets frustrated, they want to be able to use this stuff, but they get frustrated with the complexities. It really simplifies those complexities out. And they're just a simple button that you can program it to work with your phone. You can program it to work with the house. It's pretty neat little thing. And I just wanted to share it. It's got a lot of uses, I believe.
It's cool. I like that. Yeah.
To control some of those smart home things we were talking about. Yeah, that's great.
Oh yeah. It's really cool.
Well, I'm showing we have about a minute left. So if anybody else has any questions, I do have one that have these remote supports systems been presented to people with IDD. We're going to definitely talk about that in a lot more detail on our next 2 remote support sessions. But absolutely, yes, remote supports should never be used unless the person gives their consent and is involved in the design of how not only the technology that goes into their home, but also how that technology is used to support them. So to answer your question, Tungi, that is yes to that. So with that, I'm not seeing any other questions. Donald, did you have anything else?
No, this has been a great turnout. I hope we keep the momentum going with this journey of learning about tech solutions. And I think our next one is when, Dustin, let me check.
It is on April the 8th and April the 9th from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock.
Yeah, then that will be focused on remote supports 1 and 2. Part 1 is giving you just overall knowledge of what remote supports is, the history of it, different types. And then part 2 kind of transitions into providing the audience with those best practices around planning and implementation of remote supports. I think these 2 are very pivotal just based on the environment we've all been living in as far as COVID and how that's impacted people with disabilities over the course of over a year. And how we can potentially get better at planning and implementation through this training. So I really encourage everyone to register for that one as well. As I stated, we'll get these videos together. We're looking to also make sure they're hosted on DDS's website, so you can always refer back to them. And Dustin and I are always available for additional questions. I want to thank Ken for joining us today. This was awesome about Next Gen. Hopefully we can find another opportunity for you to come back to really show kind of the guts of the system, because I think those demo scenarios are huge for people to visualize it. So thank you, everyone. Darla, I'm so sorry that I was speaking so fast. I got to get better at that.
I am fine with that. I talk fast too. Thank you.
My apologies.
Thank you for your help.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
All right.